Something new. Something different. Something entertaining. Something informative. Something creative. And something to listen to. You are listening to Something Cinematic. A show for moviegoers by a moviegoer. Something Cinematic begins right now. Welcome to Something Cinematic. I am Timdiana, enduring it in search for credit. Last weekend, the latest from the mind of J.J Abrams came to the silver screen. It was none other than the highly anticipated film Super 8, a film with Steven Spielberg as the executive producer. There may need to be some concern. The movie has received many positive reviews, but of course on this show, my opinion is all that matters. And just like that, I've lost viewers. Does it live up to the anticipation? And is it worth your time? Well, maybe this will bring some enlightenment. Here's the review to Super 8. I do want to point out the following review does contain spoilers. If you have not seen the movie and like to, please turn off the show, go see the movie, and come back at a later time. If not, then please, by all means, continue with this review. The story of Super 8 follows a group of kids filming a movie until they discover an alien life form has escaped from the government and begins to create havoc. And what do they do about the alien havoc? They continue with their film with completely ignoring the conflict. You know how in movies where actually let me explain first. In truth, they're actually told not to talk about it from a dying teacher that they have who's actually a scientist who drove a truck into a train. Actually, I'm rather surprised he survived that for the most part. I mean, he didn't technically survive. He was, severely injured, but still, you would think he'd be in chunks and pieces everywhere. Anyway, he actually tells them not to talk about it because if the government finds out, or whoever these people are, we'll just say for the government or some special agency. Something like that. Just got one of those words. But anyway, he tells them not to tell anyone because if they do, then they'll come and take all their family and ruin their lives and stuff like that. Now, when these things happen in movies, the characters tend not to listen in order for the story and conflict to move forward. And usually, even though it seems like a bad idea at the time, it actually works out in the end. For the first time, I see a movie where the characters actually listen. At least for the most part. And although I give them credit for being a little different, this is one of those situations where I would like them to be kind of further the plot or kind of look into this mystery of this. And sometimes it looks like they are going to look into the mystery of this, and then they don't. You're sitting there going, really? Could you move it along? The movie followed Jackson Lamb, the father of the main character, who is played by Kyle Chandler. He's actually spending most of the time trying to figure out what's going on. In fact, when I think about it, he has a story very similar to the main character of Jaws. And I will get to that in a little bit, but, I thought to myself, maybe the movie should have followed him. Because it does follow him, but, he's not the main point of the movie. It's really, the main attraction is the kids and their development and their relationship, and because the conflict doesn't really stir up into an hour in, it's just really? So really, my biggest issue with this movie is plot, because first of all, the structure is just strange, and maybe it wouldn't have been so bad if the movie was a little longer, but it's not. It's like an hour 52 minutes, and you can tell it's a good story in that time, but really, the structure just killed this movie. So, as I've said, Super 8's plot was trying to do too much in too little time, and really, it suffers from that. Now, the movie follows the 5 main kids. Or, I'm sorry, I think 6 kids. There's Joe, Alice, who are the main kids, like who the movie centers around, along with Charles, who's who's making the movie. So that also centers a lot around him, especially for that first hour. And then there's the other kids, Carrie, Preston, and Martin. Of course, I decided to rename these characters. Carrie will be known as Sparky because he likes to blow things up. Martin shall be Barfy because he's always nervous and he's vomited at least a couple times in this movie. And for Preston, he's just expendable. But anyway, the movie follows them and follows their development. And really, they actually have some pretty good performances. Well, okay, I can't say that because for me personally, I thought it was a hit and miss. I know a lot of people are saying they really like the performance from the kids, and I have to admit they do have their moments. But some moments are like, I don't know, I didn't feel it, especially the beginning. It does work out in the end with these characters, especially for at least Joe, Alice, and Charles. But really, I just feel like it was really more hit and miss than it was like amazing. But still, I give them props and I'll give them the benefit of the doubt because I haven't seen them in anything else, for one thing. And, they're young, and for what it's worth, I think they did an alright job. The movie, as I said, the movie is actually pretty good with character development. But the issue with the movie I have with it is that it lacks dimension. Here's one of my biggest issues with the movie. There's a conflict that stirs up between Joe and Charles and Alice for kind of the centers around those kids, or at least for that first hour. And here's what the movie practically says. It's practically, when we get to the conflict between Joe and Charles, when we get closer to into the first hour, there's apparently, here's what happens. Charles actually brings in Alice to film, to be a part of the movie, and Joe is there. He's there for makeup and some of the technical stuff. And apparently, Charles and Joe have known each other for a long time. They've, and it seems like Charles is obviously the one who bosses around Joe and stuff like that. But since the story centers around Joe and Alice and how that relationship begins to build, we find out in an hour in that the only reason Charles brought Alice into the movie is because he likes her. When I say like, I mean like. And I'm sitting there going, really? You're doing this now? I mean, it's not bad to have this, but you didn't even hint from it. We're just supposed to, he just wanted to do it because he just did. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's nice. Little heads up would have been nice. Real nice. Come on. And that's one of the issues I have with this movie, because it feels like it just throws that in there. That conflict in there. It didn't need that. It really didn't. And it would have worked if they did it in a different way, or if there was another conflict between like Joe and Charles. Like if, Joe's finally had it of like Charles bossing him around, or they actually, developed Charles' character to see that there's a chance that he does like Alice. But really, they didn't do that, and that bugs the crap out of me. And as I've said, the movie, it just lacks dimension. Not really development, but it lacks dimension, because a lot of the characters, even though they're developed well, there's not much to those characters. And one of my biggest issues with this movie is the government characters, because, they're just there to be government characters. To be kind of antagonists to the movie. They're like, oh, we're going to do those things because we can. And people are going, why? That's class. And they're going, that's classified. You have no reason, do you? No, we haven't had much of a reason since, they started this entire cliche. I'm really tired of that cliche of, the government characters being completely characters with lack dimension. I don't mind them being antagonist characters. I just wish they gave a reason why they're doing it, besides stuff like, we're doing it because we can. And I would go into the alien, but actually we're going to talk about it a little bit later. And he's not really a character. He's more of a conflict. But we'll talk about him a little bit later, and I think now it's time to get into directing with J.J. Abrams.